First on the agenda, we would like to have a roll call to make sure we do have a quorum. Ms. Shannon Hall.
Shannon Hall, present.
Mr. B.R. Hall.
B.R. Hall, present.
Ms. Edna Jones.
Edna Jones, present.
Ms. Christine Bradley.
Christine Bradley, present.
Mr. Thomas Curtis.
Tom Curtis, present.
Mr. Stacy Rucker. I don't think Stacy is on. All right, we have a quorum. Next, I would like to read the electronic meeting procedures and then have the committee vote if they are in agreement. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the governor issued Executive Order number 16, extended by Executive Order number 71, authorizing committees to meet and conduct their essential business by electronic means if the committee determines that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. If you are in agreement with this, please say aye or yes. Ms. Shannon Hall.
Shannon Hall, yes.
Mr. B.R. Hall.
B.R. Hall, yes.
Ms. Edna Jones.
Edna Jones, yes.
Christine Bradley.
Christine Bradley, yes.
Tom Curtis.
Tom Curtis, yes.
And Stacy Rucker, I believe, has still not joined the call. All right, moving on. Again, if you are using audio only, please identify yourself before speaking. The next item will be election of chair and vice chair of this committee. It would be wonderful if we could have one from the elected side and one from the appointed side. Are there any nominations for chair or vice chair? I will open the floor.
B.R. Hall nominates Edna Jones.
For chair, correct?
Correct.
Is there a second?
Tom Curtis seconds.
Okay, let's take a vote on Edna Jones as chair for the Medical and Life Committee. Ms. Shannon Hall.
Shannon Hall, yes.
B.R. Hall.
B.R. Hall, yes.
Edna Jones.
Yes. Edna Jones, yes.
Christine Bradley.
Christine Bradley, yes.
Tom Curtis.
Tom Curtis, yes.
Edna, do you have a question? Edna, I see you've got your hand raised. I didn't know if that was an inadvertent hand raise or if you want to place a nomination for vice chair. Edna's on mute.
This is Shannon Hall. I nominate Christine Bradley as vice chair.
Okay, wonderful. Is there a second to this?
Yeah, Tom Curtis
B.R.
seconds.
Hall, second.
Okay, we have a second. Let's take a vote for Christine Bradley as vice chair of the Medical and Life Committee. How do you vote, Shannon Hall?
Shannon Hall, yes.
B.R. Hall.
B.R. Hall, yes.
Edna Jones.
Edna Jones, yes.
Christine Bradley.
Christine Bradley, yes.
Tom Curtis.
Tom Curtis, yes.
And Stacy Rucker, I still do not see in attendance. All right, thank you. So it looks like we have a chair and a vice chair. Our chair is Edna Jones and Christine Bradley is vice chair. Sounds familiar. Next up will be our appeal, which you should have gotten a packet if you were on this committee. It is a self-insured Cigna plan appeal, denial of laparoscopy, surgical esophageal sphincter augmentation procedure, placement of sphincter augmentation device, example, magnetic band. This is a member that is participating in the self-insured Cigna plan, was denied this procedure for the treatment of gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD. Previously, this request and first level grievance for this coverage were denied. The member has appointed Priya Healthcare Management as their authorized representative to appeal Cigna's denial. Cigna has supplied documentation on their denial, this being experimental, investigational, and unproven is the reason for their denial, and their medical policy for this appeal. Priya has also supplied documentation for their appeal. This information is included in the confidential medical section of the committee packet. I will turn it over to Chair of the committee, Edna Jones. And Edna, I would like to just point out that Hope, I'm going to mess up her last name, Zoisa maybe, of Priya Healthcare is on the call, as well as the member, Mr. DePena. And also we do have Paul Huffman from Cigna. So Edna, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I see both parties have submitted quite a bit of written information. So I think I'll ask Paul Huffman if he would like to explain the reason for denial, or if he has someone else present to do that. Paul.
Yes, this is Paul Huffman. Good morning. Senior Client Manager with Cigna Healthcare. I've also invited our Senior Medical Director, Dr. Jim Lancaster. He is also on this call as a panelist, and I invited him in case there are any questions related to the clinical questions, clinical aspects of this appeal, and any questions related to the coverage policy and the review thereof. But as Christina mentioned, we did receive a pre-certification request, and this procedure was originally denied as a pre-service, and then we received a first-level appeal, and then on August 14th of 2020, and that appeal was upheld, or the denial was upheld, again, due to the procedure still being considered experimental, investigational, primarily based on the fact that there's not enough current published medical studies to show magnetic sphincter augmentation treatment of gastroesophageal reflux disease is effective or improved outcomes. So that letter was delivered to the member, and then the second level appeal was presented to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Huffman. Any questions from board members for Mr. Huffman at this time? We'll have time later to ask also. Okay, I believe we'll go on to the employee or his representative at this time, if you'd like to present to the board. Also, I want to mention that our Civil Service Medical Examiner, Dr. Gil Wright, is also present and will be able to answer questions later. So the employee's representative at this time.
Good morning. My name is Hope Savisha, and I am with Priya Healthcare. I represent Ruben DePena in the denial of the LINKS procedure. I do have some statements to make. I know Ruben would like to speak also, but thank you for this opportunity. And Ruben has been suffering for 3 to 4 years with GERD. This is affecting his life family-wise, socially, and professionally. He has taken many PPIs that have not adequately resolved his symptoms, and has had side effects from those medications, which include, as he reports, diarrhea, dizziness, loss of appetite, weight loss, cold spells, silent reflux, headaches, frequent cold and allergies, kidney issues, apathy, and he says some of these may not be related to those medications, but coincidentally, most of these conditions disappeared since he stopped taking the medications, in particular PPIs. As far as dietary restrictions, these have significantly impacted his life. It's difficult to avoid eating the foods that he likes and asking family members and friends to accommodate his situation whenever there are family parties or celebrations. As far as sleeping, he wakes up several times at night coughing. He states sometimes warm milk calms it down, but it doesn't always work. He states that his quality of life professionally interferes with certain daily tasks, particularly those involved in doing presentations or speaking on a radio. Sometimes he's had to suspend a session because of uncontrollable cough due to acid reflux, particularly silent reflux. He's also invested $5,000 in a bed to electronically control his sleeping positions. And with that, he's still awake several times a night, coughing up mucus, sometimes experiencing choking sensation. This condition has caused his wife and himself to not sleep in the same room any longer. He consistently clears his throat before he goes to bed, and then his sleep pattern gets interrupted as he awakes from coughing. He reports constant throat clearing during the day as well, but less frequently when he's able to lay down. He follows a diet that avoids GERD triggers and usually doesn't eat anything too late at night. He has also had frequent GERD attacks even on a standing position. He has tried various medications, which he has developed allergies to by report. He was prescribed Zantac regimen before it was taken off the market, and some of the medications work temporarily, but when the symptoms come back, they are worse, and doctors switch to other medications. He feels these medications were hurting him instead of helping him. And he has been seen at an emergency room due to the fact that he thought the GERD was causing him to have the same feelings were causing him to have a heart attack. And I would like the opportunity now to read a formal clinical statement on Ruben's behalf. And thank you very much again for taking the time to speak with us regarding Ruben and his request for coverage and payment of the LINX Reflux Management System. The LINX Reflux Management System is a laparoscopic fundus-sparing anti-reflux procedure indicated for patients diagnosed with gastroesophageal reflux disease, otherwise known as GERD, requiring no permanent anatomic alteration to restore the reflux barrier. The LINX Reflux Management System is a flexible ring of small magnets placed around the lower esophageal sphincter, or LES, during a minimally invasive procedure. The strength of the magnets helps keep the LES closed to prevent reflux. When patients swallow, the LINX Reflux Management System opens temporarily to allow food and liquid to pass into the stomach. The LINX Reflux Management System is FDA PMA approved, P100049, as indicated for patients diagnosed with GERD as defined by abnormal pH testing, and who continue to have chronic GERD symptoms despite maximum medical therapy for the treatment of reflux. As you know, through submission of his medical records by Dr. Kenneth Tyson Thomas, Ruben DePina has a history of GERD. Dr. Kenneth Tyson Thomas has established medical necessity for this procedure by providing documentation of the type and severity of symptoms, including several-year history of severe reflux, regurgitation, awakening in the middle of the night with an acidic metallic taste in his throat, coughing, and frequent throat clearing from acid, and has documented the results of diagnostic tests and measures, including a Demeester score of 16.5, as well as previous interventions and therapies, including PPIs and lifestyle changes that have not adequately resolved Ruben DePina's GERD. Ongoing GERD is associated with development of Barrett's esophagus, which is the only known precursor to the development of esophageal adenocarcinoma. Standard treatment options for GERD include a proton pump inhibitor, PPI, to reduce gastric secretion, which are often successful at alleviating heartburn or erosive esophagitis, but have no direct impact on LES function. Laparoscopic Nissen fundoplication, LNF, has been the standard anti-reflux surgery, but poses mechanical side effects, including the inability to vent air or belch from the stomach, resulting in abdominal bloating and increased flatulence. Magnetic sphincter augmentation is a minimally invasive procedure addressing the root cause of reflux, which is a weak lower esophageal sphincter. Managing GERD by addressing the esophageal sphincter offers patients an option to avoid chronic treatment with proton pump inhibitors, which a growing number of publications suggest are associated with a variety of adverse events. PPIs have been associated with an increased risk for osteoporotic-related fractures, C. diff, community-acquired pneumonia, kidney disease, and dementia. Since medical therapy only alters the pH of refluxate, GERD symptoms often persist despite optimized medical therapy. Multiple Level 1 and Level 2 published studies conclude that magnetic sphincter augmentation is safe, provides long-term reduction of esophageal acid exposure, and substantially improves symptoms with elimination of daily use of PPIs. Well-selected patients, such as Ruben, report consistent, durable symptom control, and physicians have noted improvement on objective diagnostic measurements. Bell et al. Reported a 152-patient randomized control trial comparing treatment once daily with proton pump inhibitors to laparoscopic magnetic sphincter augmentation. 89% of patients treated with magnetic sphincter augmentation reported relief of regurgitation compared to 10% on twice-daily PPIs, and 91% remained off of PPI therapy at the 12-month follow-up. Prospective comparative data published by Gans et al. And Boniva et al. Followed patients up to 6 years post-MSA, demonstrating long-term durability and safety, as well as sustained control of reflux with minimal side effects or complications. A multi-center prospective registry of 249 patients, Riegler et al., also compared magnetic sphincter augmentation to laparoscopic fundoplication 1 year post-procedure. Moderate or severe regurgitation improved from 58% to 3% after MSA and from 60% to 13% after fundoplication. Following MSA, 91% of patients were able to vomit compared to 44% after fundoplication, with the authors concluding that MSA should be considered as a first-line surgical option in appropriately selected patients. Additionally, a position statement from the American Society of General Surgeons states, based on currently available information and the experience of our members with the procedure, we do support the LINX procedure as mechanism for controlling GERD when it is placed properly by a trained laparoscopic surgeon with experience in foregut surgery and the management of GERD patients. Based on Ruben DePina's clinical presentation, published clinical evidence, and the ASGS's recommendations, he meets established criteria for medical necessity for magnetic sphincter augmentation. The device is neither experimental nor investigational. Therefore, we appreciate your approval for pre-authorization and payment for this much-needed procedure to improve his GERD management. Thank you again for your time and consideration in allowing me to represent Ruben DePina for the physician-recommended and medically necessary LINX system. And thank you. That concludes my statement.
Thank you very much, Hope, for your very educational and detailed information.
My pleasure.
I wonder if the employee, the initials RD, would like to address the board at this time.
Absolutely. Ruben DePena here. I appreciate everyone participating. I wish I weren't here because truly I'm not excited about any procedure of any kind, but I've followed everything that I was recommended, all the advice, and yet I have not found relief. And most importantly, I find that it is affecting both professionally and also on my family life. As it was stated, one of the things that concerns me the most is when my condition interferes with my job. There have been instances that I have embarrassingly had to say to the public, I cannot continue. My voice completely shuts down because of acid lodging in. And the problem is that it comes all of a sudden. I don't even feel necessarily any acid, but all of a sudden when I'm talking and I lose my voice, I start coughing because the acid, even though it may not have all the, I guess, acidity, I don't know the term, to burn necessarily, although it does most of the time, but occasionally it doesn't. I start coughing uncontrollably. At night, I wake up several times, and I wish I could be on camera to show all this. You can hear it's a bag of all the past medications. I even kept bottles of Zantac just for the future in case I develop something else, because doctors insisted that I should be on Zantac as well. And then lo and behold, a few months later, say, oops, we need to discontinue because of the risk of cancer. So, I mean, it's up to you as you see the pros and cons, and I will definitely abide by whatever decision you take. I was very encouraged when I was told about this procedure because it's not as invasive, and based on what I have found out myself, it seems to be like what I need. However, you guys, you evaluate everything and let me know. But I wish I could have my life back. You know, it's one of the things that I was surprised when I was also diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. I don't know if necessarily has to do with that, with the medication. It could be other factors. That has also, you know, prevented me from being more active in my social and professional life, especially with COVID. So I look forward with the vaccine, probably things will be better. But again, it's just like, it's something that when I try to explain to people, sometimes they say, oh, what is it that you have? And in fact, I went to a doctor, and that doctor said, well, you may have, well, something else, and refer me to two, what do you call the nose, throat, what do you call, whatever it's called, nose, throat, and the other one, I forgot. People who checked on your throat to see, but of course, it's nothing like that. And so GERD has been a problem for 3 or 4 years. And like I said, I've taken everything, famotidine, both OTC, prescribed Zantac or generic, esomeprazole, omeprazole, lansoprazole, rabiprazole, and I don't know if there are any other prazoles that I have missed from the list, because I just checked on my bag and all the medications that I have taken all the way, and some bottles that I have empty, Ergocal, sucralfate. There have been some medications that I have taken and temporarily had produced. For example, I've taken famotidine, and then it comes with a vengeance. It doesn't help at all after that. So, excuse me. So, I basically, I'm open. I would like not to have it if possible, the surgery, but I feel encouraged that this would definitely be something that I might need. But again, you guys are the experts. I know that what I feel, and it's not funny. It's every day, clearing my throat day and night, but obviously mostly it's brutal at night. And as it was stated, I bought this bed, hoping that, you know, I can put myself in a sitting position that would be, you know, that would take care of it. But still, I've been walking, and even walking, I have the GERD attacks. So that is my conclusion. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Ruben DePina. I will ask board members if you have any questions for Cigna, Paul Huffman, Hope with Apria Healthcare, and Mr. DePina at this time, if there are any questions. Okay, seeing none.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Shannon. I just didn't necessarily want to go first. I wanted to make sure I didn't crowd out anybody else if they had questions.
Okay, Board Member Shannon Hall, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Shannon Hall. I think I heard from Hope and certainly from Mr. DePena's summary that you guys have explored lots of conservative treatments here, including the proton pump inhibitors, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. because I was trying, obviously, educating myself about this particular condition, and then looking not only at the records that were supplied by Cigna and the medical policy, but also in Mr. Pena's records as well, and trying to better understand the links procedure. So I think, let me go on and ask this. I have probably a few different questions, and depending on those answers, probably some observations. But on the, I noticed that in some of the medical literature provided by the appellant, that there are several national payers, insurance payers, that do cover this treatment for this type of condition. I see a number of them noted, now, including Blue Cross Blue Shield of different states, in Edna, Humana. I'm just curious if we have a Blue Cross representative, or if anybody knows, is this covered under Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee's policy?
I believe Mr. Russell Henderson is on the call. Mr. Henderson.
Yes. Hey, this is Russ Henderson for Blue Cross. Shannon, I appreciate that question. And in preparation for this call, I did review the coverage position from a medical necessity perspective, and it is also considered experimental and investigative, similar to Cigna's position.
I assume due to the lack of studies, I think you're probably wanting more. And I do appreciate, the role that both of our administrators play in trying to make sure that there is plenty amounts of medical-based evidence before they deem a procedure. So I certainly wanted to say that I certainly appreciate what Cigna and Blue Cross do for us in providing us this medical expertise. I also try to look at it from the other side, which is the patient side. And on the patient side, with this gentleman having explored so many other conservative treatments without any kind of relief or even adjustment to it, because I think medications are honestly just masking the issue, not necessarily addressing the cause of the issue. I was trying to read through the appropriate parts of the Cigna medical policy that have been supplied on this, because it seems to really focus on a greater set of collection of policies related to similar type conditions. So on page 25 of the Cigna medical coverage policy seems to kind of talk a little bit more clearly about this particular LINCS reflux management system, this particular request as it relates to GERD. And it does outline in some of this, some of the same information that sounded pretty consistent with what Hope also outlined for us on behalf of the claimant, that there appear to be some studies, probably not broad studies, that really help Cigna to feel comfortable enough to get it out of the investigational and experimental component. But some of these studies, consistent with what Hope says, seem to indicate that this procedure has a pretty high success rate versus the proton pump inhibitors that Mr. DePena has been exploring and using without a lot of success. That, for the majority of people who do this, after having explored these other more conservative measures, that there's a 90+% success rate versus an almost 10% success rate for peers that continued with the PPI. And I'm just wondering if Cigna can speak to some of that, because it sounds like you guys are citing some of these same studies that demonstrate some success specifically for this particular magnetic band placement for severe conditions. So I'm just wondering if somebody from the Cigna side could help validate or help, address that as well.
Mr. Huffman, would you like to address that?
Yes, this is Paul Huffman. I would also allow or ask Dr. Jim Lancaster if he wants to share anything specifically regarding our coverage review that was conducted back in August of 2020, and anything related to the literature that was cited in our coverage review and any lack thereof.
Okay, Dr. James Lancaster, would you like to address the board?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that, Madam Chairman. And also, I would like to say that in regards to our coverage policy, Ms. Hall, you're quite right. There are actually about 5 of the 54 pages on this coverage policy that talk specifically about the LINCS procedure. I think we cover a lot of the same literature in review that Hope from PREA has discussed. And I do think this is, in essence, kind of as Mr. DePena stated, he's tried those conservative measures. This is kind of surgical intervention is not something that physicians or patients desire. Typically, the gold standard, I think, as Hope mentioned, is typically Nissen fundoplication, which is a surgical procedure that's been around for, decades and decades. I think the concern in the coverage policy is primarily around not the efficacy of the procedure, but the long-term outcomes, which is mentioned in some of the literature that we cite. At the same time, I should say that I know Dr. Thomas. I practiced here in Nashville for 15 years. Dr. Thomas was one of the surgeons I referred to at St. Thomas West, and he took care of a tremendous number of my patients. I do trust his opinion. He and I had a personal conversation regarding this. I called him physician to physician to discuss. I've shared with him our coverage policy as well, and explained to him that primarily this has to do with long-term outcomes, but at the same time, I understand his opinion.
I think that's fair. I'm really interested in hearing where other board members are at this point, but let me say again how much I support and agree with the medical policy and the reviews that are happening with both of our administrators and how important they are. So I think they're making appropriate recommendations when they have enough data. They change those policies, and I really appreciate that role. I kind of feel like in this particular case, this is sometimes why medical appeals come to the board. There's going to be this exception factor where you've got a member who has an unusual set of circumstances where he has explored for years all of the normal conservative treatments without any relief. It is not lost on me that I'm hearing things like not only the nods to both his disruption in his personal and professional life, but if he's not able to properly sleep at night, he's not good to himself or anybody else, whether that's at home or at work. The fact that there's mention that even his wife has had to take a separate bedroom, that he sometimes feels like he cannot perform fully some of the features of our job, which includes interacting with the public when he's speaking to the public. Those are concerning to me. And so I agree with what the current stance is for Cigna and Blue Cross at this time based on the medical documentation and studies that they have. But I also feel like this particular case could warrant an exception for coverage, because I appreciate the comments from Dr. Lancaster. But part of my concern is if this guy's been suffering for years with this, without conservative treatment, when we talk about long-term goals, at some point he may have suffered enough or done enough damage without any, this is going to wreak damage on his body if he doesn't properly treat it. I'm worried about those long-term effects as well. So
hey, Shannon,
to hear where other board members are.
Shannon, this is Christine, and I'm sorry, guys, but I don't see where I can put my hand up here. So if I could just jump in and, on the PREA document, page 3, PREA Healthcare on behalf of members document page 3, there's a statement that says the Nissen fundoplication is covered by the policy, but it will be more invasive as it permanently alters the patient's anatomy by creating new sphincter, an irreversible, non-specific sparing procedure, lacks standardization, and has demonstrably higher failure rate over time as reported in the literature. So, I'm wondering if this procedure is done, could he always go back and do the more invasive one? I guess that question is for Dr. Wright.
Dr. Wright, and then after Dr. Wright, Board Member B.R. Hall, his hand up.
Oh, that's a good question. I am not a surgeon. I am unsure if they could, but I guess it's possible.
Okay, thank you. I just, it just feels like the alternative is certainly much more invasive. Thank you.
Okay, Board Member B.R. Hall, you're recognized.
B.R. Hall, I move that this procedure be covered for this individual.
This is Board Member Edna Jones. I second that motion that this be covered for this employee only. Any questions? Okay, I think we're ready to vote. I will call the roll for vote. Board Member Shannon Hall, how do you vote?
Shannon Hall, yes.
Board Member B.R. Hall, how do you vote?
B.R. Hall, yes.
Board Member Christine Bradley, how do you vote?
Christine Bradley, yes.
Board Member Tom Curtis, how do you vote? Board Member Tom Curtis. Board Member Tom Curtis, how do you vote?
Tom Curtis votes yes.
Thank you. Board Member Edna Jones votes yes. Board Member Stacy Rucker is absent, so the motion carries. Correct, Christina?
Yes, that is correct. So this is an approval for this employee under these circumstances for this particular procedure. I do want to note to Hope and to Mr. DePina that this is a recommendation that will go before the full board. Our full board meets the first Tuesday of every month. This Tuesday of March will be March 2nd. So this is a recommendation to go to the full board, where the full board will see this information and will vote again for the approval or the disapproval of this. Thank you.
Dana, are there any other items on the agenda?
No, Madam Chair, there's not.
Okay, I believe we're ready to be adjourned. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a lovely day.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.